Hi there. Thanks for joining me here on Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, the founder of Bare Bones Yoga and the creator of the Momentum Magic Method, the way to become a confident teacher, one who effortlessly walks around the room, shares clear cues, easily builds sequences, and speaks from your heart, sharing authentically with your students. Here on the podcast, you'll discover new and inspiring ways to share your cues and create your sequences. You'll uncover habits and frameworks all designed to empower you so that you can teach in a way that feels authentic and natural. For some episodes, I'll have a guest, and other episodes I'll share with you on my own, and in each one, you'll always get action steps and takeaways you can apply right away to your teaching. In addition to the podcast, follow me on Instagram and TikTok for daily videos. You'll see a link on both of my profiles, my Stan Store link. Click it and unlock ways you can get the support you need to be the teacher of your dreams. You'll find links to the podcast, my free ebook, and other resources to help you be the best teacher you can be. You'll also find the link to my signature program, the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program, and you can see if you qualify to enroll. So with that, let's get on with today's show. Hi there and welcome. Welcome to Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, and this is episode 326. I'm recording this on December 3rd, 2024, and this episode will go live on December 9th, 2024. So you're listening to it that day or someday thereafter. If you're a new listener to the show, welcome. If you have been listening before, welcome back. Today, I'm excited to bring you this really thought-provoking and thoughtful, and what I think is a very interesting interview with Helene Whitfield, who is the Chief Visionary Officer of the newly formed Global Online Yoga Association, otherwise known as Goya. Helene talks about what inspired her and her co-founders with the vision to create such an organization, what is the mission of the organization, and how it can benefit you as the yoga teacher. And I really want to emphasize that part, that the bulk of our conversation is around what is the benefit to you if you are a member of Goya, and what makes it different from the other organizing body in the yoga industry, otherwise known as Yoga Alliance. We have an extensive and at times really just a frank conversation about what's not working in the industry right now, what many yoga teachers are asking for, and just in our own experiences, some of the conversations we've had with teachers who are looking for something different. And more importantly, just again, going into what can you gain from being a member of Goya, and just more about putting you in the driver's seat with regard to your path as a yoga teacher and what you need so that you can become the most empowered, confident, impactful yoga teacher out there for yourself and for everyone you come into contact with, knowing, of course, that yoga is such a powerful modality for people to participate in. So I hope that you'll find this conversation stimulating and interesting, and I hope it answers some of your questions. And I welcome any and all questions that you have. You'll hear in the beginning of the conversation a little bit about how I was introduced to Helene simply through an email she sent me, as she has sent and her organization has sent emails to many, many yoga teachers. And my conversation with her is simply out of an interest in using my podcast as an opportunity to get the word out about Goya so that, again, you as the yoga teacher know what's out there and have options. So with that, we'll head into my conversation with Helene Whitfield of Goya. Here we go. Hi, Helene. It is great to see you. Thank you so much for being here on Conversations for Yoga Teachers. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yes, thank you so much. So I was really glad that we connected and that you were, interested in being on the show, because I think there's so much important stuff here that we're going to cover. And I don't know how much the listener knows about you and what we're going to be talking about today, the creation of this organization. So I thought maybe a good place to start is just to get to know you a little bit better, your yoga teaching background and what you're doing in that area before we get into the specific topic of Goya.
Right, absolutely. So prior to 2007, I was working in the corporate world, 9 to 5, not loving every moment of the day. And I became pregnant with my daughter in 2007. And, I sat down with my husband and he said, okay, if you want to shift, this is the time to find a shift. And I had already done a yoga teacher training back in 2005, which was wonderful. So I was teaching part-time in the evenings, just sort of, making sure that I keeping my qualifications up and keeping my experience up.
Yeah.
And I was just walking by a building one day and I saw a little space and I thought, I'm just going to open a yoga studio.
Amazing.
And, from that point, 8 weeks in, the studio opened. I had my daughter 2 weeks before that. So it was just me and 40 classes a week, which was a lot. And of course, that fear of running your own business and the overhead. So I quickly realized that I needed other people around me. So the little studio grew. We ended up with 5 studios over the years. And we
Wow.
began yoga teacher trainings starting in September of 2020, and we started yoga teacher trainings in September of 2010. So in-person yoga teacher trainings. And we slowly built that. We did 2 or 3 a year. And then we started to expand a little bit where we were doing retreat type yoga teacher trainings, intensive immersions. And I think anybody out there who's experienced running trainings and running studios, it's a struggle at best often. I know a lot of people often have the misconception that there's a lot of money involved, and that is a misconception. um, yeah, so we went through and we continued, and we sort of began to see a shift. The cost of yoga teacher trainings was expensive for people, but we needed to charge a certain amount just to cover our base costs. And in 2018, we decided we're not going to do yoga teacher trainings anymore and that we would close the studios. Almost like I felt something was shifting. And I thought, okay, team, this is it. This is the last year, and we're going to have to reinvent and start again. I had moved on to becoming a critical care paramedic. And then, of course, as we know, COVID hit.
Mm.
And my team of teachers, for some reason in 2018, 2017, we began filming things online, and not putting it out there, but just having filmed resources, because we thought at some point things have to shift. We had thought that online programming was necessary for a long time because it was a great way to bring the costs for the student down, right? And we thought we could do it and still retain the quality of the programming. And then COVID hit, and then and my team said, okay, should we try to put this online? And I didn't actually have the foresight. One of my teachers, Mark, said to me, I'm sure people will want to join. And I thought, no, not right now. Everyone is inundated with pandemic chaos, and we put it out there, I believe, in May of 2020. And within the first month, we had almost 5,000 students. So it just goes to show that it was really needed at that time, and it didn't take away from the quality of the training, and everything just sort of shifted from there. And it was during the pandemic, and what we're going to talk about a little bit today is where I saw the shift for me happen, where I felt as if I had nowhere to turn or no resources to look to. And I really needed help, but I didn't find a community out there that could help. And that is sort of where the shift came with Yoga Alliance as well.
Got it. Just for a point of reference, where do you live? Just so that we have an idea.
I am in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, beautiful Vancouver, Canada. And so that's where I'm based. Some of our other leadership team are based around the world. Sharon is based in Australia. Andrea is based in Ontario. Dr. Lauren Turner, she's based out of New York. So we're sort of all over the globe.
Okay. Now, before we switch to kind of segue to the second topic, where are things at for you right now with the studios and teaching online with them?
Right. So I no longer have the studios. I am in a transition phase now where I am selling the online programming of teaching, because I just can't, I don't have enough time to commit to both things, and it's unfair. So I have a wonderful group of teachers who want to take that over. So that's where that's at, so that I can commit my full resources to Goya and really building this community.
Got it. Okay, so that's a really nice transition to, really the heart of what I want to talk more in depth about. And just to give the listener an idea, I had gotten, and the listeners may also have received this, an email from you, like your picture was right there,
Yeah.
explaining the creation of a new organization in the yoga industry called Goya, Global Online Yoga
Yoga,
Association.
right, association. Yeah.
Right. So I read the email. It was very interesting to me, for a number of reasons, which we can get into. And I asked a couple questions and you got right back to me. And that right away, I was like, wow, this is really great that there's like a human being to this email. That's, I get that a lot because I reply to all my emails, and sometimes teachers will say, wow, I can't believe you're replying. I'm like, that's what I do. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. And we went back and forth a little bit. You answered some questions I had. And then I went about my day and I thought this would make such a great topic on my show, because I talk about Yoga Alliance every now and again in a particular context, and it has to do with my focus on teaching yoga teachers anatomy inside my virtual program, which I had long before COVID, in large part because my expertise is the application of anatomy to yoga. And because of that program, I have so many teachers enroll in it because of their lack of good anatomy training in their 200-hour. And so I have this sort of unique perspective on seeing across the globe this missing piece. And my program fills that piece. And my program is very intentionally not an hours-based program. So I've always been sort of, even though I am a continuing education provider for Yoga Alliance, and when teachers take that program, they can use CEUs towards their registration, I intentionally don't have that program be part of a 200, 300, or 500-hour. Because what I found, and I talk about this on a lot of these episodes in my videos, is that the number of hours doesn't always equal excellent teaching or confidence in teaching and things like that. So I've talked about, and the listener of this episode, if they've listened to other episodes, will sort of see that our conversation is a really nice fit in with a lot of those prior conversations I've had. So I want to give you really just a starting point to describe a little bit about what is Goya and what is the motivation in creating this organization.
Absolutely. So before I even mention that, I will say anatomy was one of the key things that triggered always for me. We had tried in our yoga teacher trainings over the years to recreate the anatomy so many different ways and times, because it's such a challenging thing to teach people. And it was one of those things where, again, is there a standard for this? Not so much, right? As you know. So let me talk a little bit about Goya's and how I came to this vision. So like I said, it sort of started during the pandemic and my struggles with working with or dealing with Yoga Alliance and the challenges that kept arising. And I thought there is a need for something like this, for an organization that supports their membership actively, dynamically, and that also listens to the members, not just listens, but it has active contribution from the members, whether it's voting on certain things and doing this at a cost that is affordable and accessible to absolutely everyone. And I also felt that a little bit of the way the model of Yoga Alliance is set up, and most of your viewers will know this or listeners will know this, is that, you have to go to a Yoga Alliance school in order to be a Yoga Alliance member. They have one very small area of, perhaps acceptance, which is they can grandfather a teacher who's taught for 10 plus years elsewhere, but that's very minimal. So it's sort of a cycle, whereas we not only include teachers, we include students, active students right now. We include wellness practitioners who we believe are part of this holistic model. And the big function of Goya is that it is an educational resource. We have an entire academy built into the back end. In the past 5 months, we've created over 100 educational resource videos for our members. And just to give you some perspective, and I just looked this up as early as yesterday, Yoga Alliance has existed since 1999. We're now in 2024. If my math is right, that's 29 years, 28 years, something like that. They have approximately 600 items, many of which are not videos, many of which are just articles about things, some of them extremely outdated. So I just found that such a contradiction for what you're offering to people. And so the key is that we every week we post new content, new CE programming. So all of these programs that we provide are available for CE credits, which if you're with Goya, it automatically goes into your profile. You don't need to submit anything. If you're with Yoga Alliance, you can submit them, or with whatever organization you're at. But the big focus too is engagement. I became a member with Yoga Alliance, I believe in June of 2008. And I have never once been involved in any sort of community engagement with them, whether it's been challenging to find out how that even works or who's actually engaging. And then at some point, to be honest, I just sort of gave up, right? I just thought this is a lot of effort. I paid my dues and I thought, okay, I get my little badge and on my way. And I think really being supportive of those individuals, because the other element we also offer is for all of our schools who wish to become members with us, we provide them the entire business of yoga element, because as you know, the anatomy element is a struggle, the business element is a struggle for yoga schools. Many of them don't have that expertise to understand how this works. And it has to be dynamic, especially the business of yoga section, right? So we offer that full 5-hour programming for them. We re-record it every 6 months, just in any case that things are changing. We're looking to develop things with other people, such as yourself, that, hey, maybe we need to offer an anatomy segment with people, for people, and not at an absurd cost. Membership with us for teachers is $39. For students, it's $19. For wellness practitioners, it's $39 a year. There is no registration fee for members. And for everyone right now, the first year is free, because I believe, they deserve to see what we offer and make a decision based on that. So really, it's not about being a directory. We can be a directory forever and ever and ever, which we will be as well. But I can tell you a handful of times I've ever looked up the Yoga Alliance directory. I don't think potential employers are looking at it. I think it's just there. So I think it's also a place where while we have baseline standards for programs, we're there to be dynamic and diverse. There's for example, yoga school, there's an entire, I believe, 80 or 90 hours where it's content that school decides to build on their own. Because as we know, there's so many variations of teaching and styles of teaching, and people have so much to bring to it, right? So who are we to decide ultimately what every single hour of the program is? I believe diversity is key. And I think accepting and learning and growing from other programs is really important as well. So really being focused on providing real services each and every day to our members, and making sure that it is inclusive, not exclusive. You don't have to be a member of a Goya school to be able to register with us. I find that a barrier to entry. Why wouldn't we want to include people from all over, and to make this more of Yoga Alliance is very focused, I think, on North America, Canada, and the US. I think Europe has been left aside for a long, long time, in Asia and, Australia. So I think really bringing in a true global community really makes a big difference. So I rambled on there.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, I can certainly say just on that last point, when I look at who listens to my podcast, it's all over the world. And I'm always so fueled by that idea. And in my own program, I've had teachers in Australia and Japan, other Ireland, France, a lot of other countries enroll. And I love when that happens. And at the same time, I'm amazed that they all have the same concerns about, especially this anatomy piece. And so what that says to me is the common thread is the Yoga Alliance 200-hour program with respect to anatomy is absolutely selling people short. So anyway, let me ask you this question. Part of what you're describing as I'm hearing it, and just give me your thoughts on this, is sort of the difference between a registry that basically says, here are teachers who have gone through programs that we believe meet our standards. That's basically what Yoga Alliance is saying, even though they have no boots on the ground and they do no level of quality assurance to monitor and ensure that at the ground level, trainings are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's the philosophy that they hold out. They're a registry. They are an organization that registers yoga teachers. And I want to make that point because many, many times I have conversations with teachers who use the term certification, and that's a different term than a registry. A registry is just basically a rubber stamp that says you went to ABC training. ABC training is registered with Yoga Alliance as a school that has submitted documentation to us that says they're going to provide a training that meets our standard requirements. We don't know that they're doing that, but they said that they're doing that. Now,
and we never follow up to check.
Well, right.
Never ever follow up. Yeah.
I have called Yoga Alliance specifically on that point, and what they've told me is if a teacher goes to a program and feels that it fell short, we will follow up on that individual's complaint. And I remember they described it as a Yelp-like format where feedback from teachers drives inquiry from Yoga Alliance. So be that as it may, or whether or not that's happening, I don't know. It sounds like, though, that you're talking about something a little different, something that connects to your experience of looking for resources, education, continuing education, community engagement from Yoga Alliance in your own experience years back, and not getting that, and wanting to create an organization that filled that perceived gap.
Right. And I think, and you sort of hit the nail on the head, that the reality is people don't know what they don't know. Everyone understands Yoga Alliance to be some sort of accreditation body because they've had many, many years to create this narrative, and we've all bought into it over the years,
well,
and we've contributed.
We've all bought into it. I think that because I certainly haven't ever bought into it because I'm very objective look at what is exactly happening. I think the unfortunate thing is Number one, I think a lot of teacher training programs say you will be certified when you complete our program. That's an inappropriate use of that terminology. And secondly, I think a lot of yoga students who enroll in yoga training programs assume that when they go to a 200-hour program, they will be certified, and Yoga Alliance is therefore a certification body. I also am a certified personal trainer, and the process to become certified through NASM is very different, including a test you must take at a testing center. You must pass it. It's hundreds of questions. We don't have that in the yoga industry.
No,
I
we
think
don't have that.
most students who then turn into teachers going through the process, they do, as you say, assume that. They assume that, oh, this is becoming certified. Oh, this organization is somehow observing, knowing, doing quality assurance, following up with all these training programs to ensure that they are doing what they said. So, be that as it may, that those may be, and it sounds like there are definite gaps in that process. I'm trying to just understand your organization isn't necessarily trying to replace that. It sounds like you're looking to offer something different.
Right. We're not looking to replace Yoga Alliance. Yoga Alliance will exist because the narrative has existed for so long. And I can tell from the responses of the emails we've sent out, some people are really, and I say this quoting certain emails where people are afraid to leave Yoga Alliance, which is absurd. There is no reason to be afraid to leave Yoga Alliance. So
Right.
they're joining us as well. But the difference here being that we are member focused, absolutely member focused, that you are entrusting us with your financial investment of the $39. And I mean, imagine if we had, say, 100,000 members. That's a huge amount of money. We should be using that money to provide resources to our membership, right? 100%. And I want to make sure that our organization is accountable to our members to show that we are providing things. For example, I mean, we've only existed for 5.5, 6 months. Every member gets 2 online yoga retreats, 1 wellness retreat. They get access to the Goya Academy. They can advertise their programming on our portal. We've in less than 5 months, we've had over 5,000 people come our way. So there is definitely a need for people wanting it. And the feedback unequivocally has been amazing. People are very happy with what we have to offer. And we're so glad to hear from other people saying, hey, have you guys thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because we haven't thought about everything, right? And we don't need 20 committees to make a decision about whether we're going to add, an anatomy section on something. And I feel like, yes, we have the standards, quote unquote, built out. Those will change over time 100%. And we're looking for our teachers and our schools to help us make those changes, not us sitting in a boardroom unequivocally making changes for an entire community of professionals. And I think that's what has bothered me over the years. And when I've reached out personally to Yoga Alliance about certain things that way, it was always like, I mean, when or if I did get a response, it was always like, well, we're thinking about that. And the classic is online yoga training. And that basically for me was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Tell me more about that. I'm missing
Right. Well, I mean, what happened when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, as you know, Yoga Alliance did not approve any kind of online virtual training ever. In fact, over the years, prior to, and in fact, many teachers over the years that I know of had been emailing saying, would you consider this? Absolutely not. There's no quality in online yoga training, right? I believe the pandemic hit in North America March 13th, March 14th. By March 21st, Yoga Alliance sent out a notice to all their member schools saying that they have put in a temporary approval for all online programming. Everything can be online. You filled in a form with your name of your school, who you are, and they said, now we're going to verify everything, and la voila. 7 hours after I submitted that form, I received approval from my school that it was now, everything was online and it was completely okay. Nobody called, nobody checked, nobody did anything. And they also said that any schools that were in the progress of registering would immediately become online schools as well. So for 15, 20 plus years, you're saying there's no quality. Okay, so we need to shift. And I'm sure they were well-intentioned, but there is a financial repercussion if they had not shifted. There was no value for Yoga Alliance at that moment. Every member could have walked away because they would not have approved anything that those people were doing, right? Yeah. And so me as a school paying, $1,500, $2,000 a year in fees to Yoga Alliance, what would the value be if they're not approving the programming I have? What they did in March of that year, they also said that they would approve programming until December 31st, 2021, so that any students you had in an online program had to finish by that time in order to be able to qualify for Yoga Alliance membership, and that they were going to think about whether online yoga programming could continue. So this was March of 2020. Months and months and months went by, and they had a Facebook group going, and I had asked a number of times, when are you going to make a decision on online programming? We have students joining who perhaps couldn't finish in that 6-month or 12-month period. And for me, and in my opinion, for me, I felt like I was ultimately being held hostage. Like, I couldn't tell people that we could guarantee anything after December 31st. So moved to September 2021, we finally get an email from Yoga Alliance saying, hey, we're now going to approve it unequivocally, forever and ever, amen, right? And so that was wonderful, great. But then for me, it was like, during that entire time, no assistance, no reaching out saying, hey, who's struggling? And yes, they have a program where they have financial resources available for people, as they should, as a not-for-profit. And let's make that very clear. Yoga Alliance is listed as a not-for-profit organization. I would encourage anyone to review their financials and see exactly how much money is coming into Yoga Alliance. And I think some folks would be extremely surprised based on what you're getting in return as a member. And so from there, I just thought, you know what, this is not for me anymore. I mean, this is absurd. And it was a struggle to make the leap to begin Goya, because in a strange way, I too was afraid. I thought, well, now my school can't have their badge, and you go into this mode, and I thought, what am I doing? I'm playing into exactly what is happening all across the globe with yoga teachers.
Right.
And
Well,
yeah.
That actually is a good springboard into what you mentioned before, but is what you're mentioning now, this fear factor. And I want to speak to this, especially again, for the person listening who might have that sort of gut punch feeling of fear when they think about maybe not being registered with Yoga Alliance at all, or even just what we're talking about here. Because I think of maybe a newer teacher who just recently began teaching and just went through a 200-hour teacher training, and they may have a certain perception attached to being a member of Yoga Alliance, and maybe kind of prescribing a certain level of importance to that. And it's not like we're saying it's not important. I think what I like to go back to is, I've been teaching yoga since 2002. I went to my first yoga class in 1999 here in Boston. I wrote the first certification standards for Baron Baptiste, who I worked for, right when Yoga Alliance was beginning to ask for 200-hour program descriptions to be submitted. So I was teaching before Yoga Alliance existed. I wrote Baron's first outline for 200-hour trainings. We had already been doing them, but Yoga Alliance just started to begin to ask for them. So anyway, I bring that up because I have that long-term perspective. What I like to share with people, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is as a person who teaches yoga, there's nothing that says you can't just teach yoga. You don't need a 200, 300, or 500 hour registration with Yoga Lines to teach yoga. I could literally walk across the street to the drug rehab center that's right across. I have a 30-day. It used to be a nursing home. They recently transitioned it to be a 30-day drug detox program. I could walk across the street, tell them I'm a yoga teacher, offer them meditation and yoga classes for their members or their residents. They're never going to ask about Yoga Alliance. No one in the world outside of the yoga industry, yoga teachers, knows anything about Yoga Alliance. No one is going to classes saying, do you have a 200, 300, or 5? None of that is happening. Now, of course, the implication is if you go through certain trainings, you will be experienced. You will know what to do. You will be a better teacher. So I get that. I think, though, the fear is oftentimes, and I want to hear what you have to say on both of these points, is connected to this idea that Yoga Alliance is some sort of regulation body. And in my view, the only reason it seems to have that tag connected to it is because so many studios will not hire a teacher unless they have a 200-hour registration status with Yoga Alliance. So the fear, I believe, comes from the idea that you'll be blocked from getting hired. And I would say, in my experience, most yoga studios do ask that. When a teacher applies to work at a studio, they will say, we only accept 200-hour level teachers at a minimum. So
Right.
that seems to be the somewhat valid concern that, well, geez, if I don't go through their process and get at least a 200-hour registration status, RYT, with Yoga Alliance, I'm probably not going to be able to teach in a studio. I might teach at my local church. I might teach at a rehab center. I might teach in a hospital. I might teach in a school. But it's going to be hard for me to teach in a studio. So what are your thoughts on that?
So here are my thoughts. As a studio owner, I never once would ever ask anybody whether they were a Yoga Alliance member. I could not care less. I wanted to know that they had completed a program and I wanted to see them teach. That's it. Yoga teaching is a profession where demonstration is pretty much mandatory when you're applying for a job, whether it's 15 minutes or 30 minutes. If I see you teach and I know that you can teach safely and effectively, and you know, you're a teacher, not so much an instructor. I think there are two very different things. And let's talk about this 200-hour. This is somewhat of a myth, right? This is created by Yoga Alliance. We all go by this 200-hour marker now, right? Even schools who are not part of Yoga Alliance call their programs 200-hour because they've done such a good job of creating that narrative that 200 hours is the base level, right? And once upon a time, when you did a yoga teacher training, in order to be insured in North America, at least, you had to be a member of Yoga Alliance. There was a time where you could not get insurance outside of that.
Absolutely, because I remember
Absolutely.
initially how I would,
Yeah.
you get both of them together, you would pay for your renewal with Yoga Alliance. At the time, you would be renewing with Philly, which was Philly Insurance became
Something like that. Yeah. Or you had to show the insurance provider that you had Yoga Alliance.
Absolutely.
And then the
Yeah.
insurance providers got smart and realized, wow, we could open our doors to even more people. They are insurance providers. They're in the business of selling. So now you can absolutely get insurance without having any Yoga Alliance stamp, any Goya stamp, any stamp. And so again, what is the purpose of the organization? Bottom line, you have to ask yourself that. Why, what am I getting in return for offering my membership to this organization? And for Yoga Alliance, I feel right now, in my opinion, it's you get a badge and you can say you have it. Yoga Alliance does not even allow you to put their RYS or RYS 200, RYS 300 on your actual certificate. A number of times I had it on originally, and I guess they had seen it at some point from a student, and they reached out to me saying, you're not allowed to use the emblem on your actual certificate for the student. So that's also very interesting, right? You can use it on your website. You can use it, in your advertising, but you cannot on the actual certificate for the student, right?
Got it.
So say Bare Bones Yoga had a 200-hour training, it would just be Bare Bones Yoga, 200-hour certified, and then just your signature. So, I mean, for me, again, it's one of those things where, yes, let's tell people over and over and over again, they are not a regulatory body. They are not a governing body. This does not exist in the yoga profession. With the exception, Australia is making huge headway. They are almost there, where it becomes part of holistic practice and services. But in North America, there is nothing. There is nothing. It's, this organization was the first one out of the gate in 1999. And I'm sure it was very well intentioned. I'm sure they thought that, that what they were offering was wonderful. And I'm sure there was a time where it was necessary, perhaps. But I think that time has changed. And I think they've had 20 plus years, 25 plus years to make the changes they've needed to. And they just aren't. I mean, for example, this is the first year I've seen an updated version of a website. And, and I don't know this for a fact, but ironically, it coincided right about the time Goya, started, right?
Well, let me ask you this, because, with regard to is 200 hours the right number? On some level, I can look at it through the lens of, well, we have to start somewhere, and somebody was willing to put a stake in the ground and say, we're going to start with this as the concept around a baseline training to provide someone with the expectation that it would give them some sort of foundational knowledge to go out and teach yoga. So let's say that became at least a place to start, even though it has.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And then let's also say, if we look at things just from a 10,000 foot level, there is a process of, if we just look at the 200-hour trainings, an agenda that those trainings must meet. That agenda that lists out how many hours you need to spend teaching X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, is essentially the promise that studios make when they submit their training documentation to Yoga Alliance. They say, I'm Studio A, I'm going to offer a 200-hour training. Here's my proof that I am offering content that meets your recipe for the 200-hour agenda. So and I'm really going through this at the detail level for the listener, because at that level, I can buy into that, because somebody is saying, okay, there are standards that we decided to hang our hat on, we being this group of teachers that started this organization, and we're putting a call out if you want to offer a program that meets these standards, albeit we're coming up with them, submit, right? I think, again, where it falls short is then there's no real interaction with the providers of the training. And the reason I can relate to this is because when teachers enroll in my program, I've had so many stories of, oh, there was a person in our training that happened to be an EMT. So the studio owner said, hey, can you teach some of the anatomy? Or we had a orthopedic surgeon teaching anatomy, and it was completely from the point of view of being a medical provider. Like, this is the at the ground level implementation of the standards that then creates, I didn't get the kind of training I want. Again, with regard to anatomy, I don't understand anatomy. There's been so many stories that I've heard from teachers that highlight this gap in the continuum. And so that's, I think, really, from my point of view, what the main concern is, that there's not necessarily anything wrong with somebody putting a stake in the ground and saying 200 hours is at least a place to start. We have this list of what you should cover. But if you don't actually have any teeth behind ensuring that that is happening, then it's really
Yes.
just window dressing.
Absolutely. It is completely window dressing. And I can say that for a fact. I have registered my schools over the years. When I first registered my 200-hour program back in 2009, early 2009, I believe it was, or 2010. At the time, my school was named Yogacara. I believe it took 24 hours to approve my school. There's no way anybody looked through that documentation that I spent many, many weeks looking through. There was another time where I was registering our children's yoga teacher training, and the individual kept coming back to me saying, oh, well, this doesn't fit the criteria. She wasn't even looking at the correct school criteria. So I spent many hours. So I don't know what is happening behind the scenes, but as a member, I feel like not a whole lot is happening behind those scenes. And I was frustrated at one point in time where someone had applied for teaching with us and provided a certificate. And I was curious. I looked up the school, and it was an online school going through one of these sort of side Skillshare type program platforms. And they were offering a 200-hour yoga teacher training, certified or accredited, whatever you want to call it, by Yoga Alliance. They were a registered yoga school, 200-hour. And out of curiosity, I enrolled in the program because I was curious, because it said that the total video content was 30 hours. So 230 is less than 200 in my mind. It did say that they offered certain Zoom sessions, for 25 minutes here and there. So I did it. I finished the course in 48 hours. And I contacted Yoga Alliance and I said, hey, you might want to take a peek at the school, because what it does is it affects schools that are actually doing everything that they're supposed to, paying the fees on top of all of that and following the protocol and changing and implementing new dynamic programming. And then somebody shows up and offers 30 hours of just generic content, doesn't even follow any schematic. And what her response to me was, she took a screenshot of the program and it says, well, look right here. It says that they offer some Zoom calls. And I thought, wow. And she's like, well, if you'd like to, you can file a grievance. It's under our grievance process. And I said, why should I file anything? You're the organization, following this. And I kind of left it at that. But that really was just, for me, I just thought, really, you're going to send me a screenshot? And we know, especially once they approved online programming, there was no verification. How would you ever know? Most of the schools that were already schools with Yoga Alliance never had an online program. So fabulous. They had the opportunity now to switch, but no guidance on what that's supposed to look like. It was kind of like, you can have 80 hours of this kind of content or that kind of content. The 200-hour base, I'm totally fine with. But you want to put the 200-hour base in, you want to say that, well, these schools offer quality programming because they're members of our organization. Well, you've never once talked to me since I've ever applied for my 200-hour in 2009. No one's ever come to check what my programming is. I could be selling certificates.
Right.
It's just, so that is the absurdity for me. And I think, again, the misrepresentation is that people think that something is happening in the background where things are being verified. And what I will say with Goya is what we're doing now at this stage, because we know people have spent thousands of dollars with Yoga Alliance getting their schools going. We're saying, let's see your syllabus, what you've got. We've got these base standards. You can switch things up. We don't have the teeth to be on the ground and check everything we're doing. We're talking about intention and ethics and integrity here. And, I think for the most part, people have integrity and they have ethics. There's always the handful that ruin it for everybody. But, at the end of the day, we want people to also have resources. And I mean, just sitting here talking to you, and just when you mentioned the anatomy, it's just so in the back of my mind now, thinking, we need to offer like an entire anatomy section just for everybody, complimentary, part of the Yoga Academy, where we have someone such as yourself or other anatomy educators who understand anatomy as it applies to yoga teaching.
Yeah, and the other
You know?
thing, honestly, from like a neuroscience standpoint, is anatomy is a subject matter that brings up such concerns on the part of yoga teachers if they feel they're not able to learn it, or they're not science minded, or they're older. Like, I've had all sorts of stories told to me by yoga teachers who feel that they are unable to learn it. So one of the things I've done is created a 10-step process that focuses teachers on exactly what they need to know, so that it takes the large subject of anatomy and puts a perimeter around it and has it learned. The teacher learns it in a step-by-step way. So you're
Of
not just
course.
looking at muscles and poses until you learn how muscles work, until you learn key muscles, until you learn key. But unfortunately, all the yoga books out there that are renowned as really amazing yoga books on anatomy, which you have, which I have, which are wonderful books, unfortunately, where they fall short is they start in the middle of the story. So the student opens the book and starts to see images of people in poses with arrows pointing to the muscles, and they don't have the basics built up in their mind. So all
Right.
that does is continue to reinforce this story of I can't learn it. So I always say to teachers when I talk to them about this, it's not your fault. You just haven't been taught this subject in a way that will help you understand it. So it's not you, it's the way the subject is being presented to you. And
Right.
there are so many teachers who've fallen asleep in teacher training, who have gone through hours and hours on the weekends. They're just completely overloaded. When we look at that from a neuroscience standpoint, you will hit the wall. You don't have the capacity to learn anymore in an 8-hour session where you're just seeing slides of muscles and this person is just droning on and on. That just doesn't work. And I think that many of these 200-hour trainings, that's how the anatomy portion is being offered. And that's why the outcome is not, on the teacher's point of view, where they want it to be. So
Right.
I think a lot of what we're talking about here really, I think it helps bring up a lot of the concerns that are out there. And I'm a little, at the same time, I'm a little worried for the listener who might be listening to this and thinking, oh my goodness, what does this mean for me as a yoga teacher? Does this mean that I've taken a program that really doesn't have any teeth behind it? And, maybe this teacher is listening thinking, if I really have to think about it, I don't really feel all that prepared. I mean, that's the other thing that I hear so many times. I took my 200-hour program. I graduated a year ago and I haven't started teaching because I don't
Yeah,
know where
because
to start. And so there is that whole final conversation about preparing somebody with a signature sequence, with a strategy for cueing, and they don't have that. So they paid the money, they gave the time, and they're not even using it. So let's kind of have that part of the conversation around, now that we've maybe pulled back the curtain to a certain extent on some of what is really happening and the real life stories, what does that mean now for teachers? How does Goya fit into it? Let's speak about that a little bit so we can sort of recongeal this into a plan of action for people.
absolutely. So when we're building out our Goya Academy, we're very strategic on it. From the beginning, the beginner teacher, so that they have resources. Okay, where do I start? How do I take the first steps to just getting out there? Then understanding more things about sequencing, because so again, so many people come out of teacher training and so many have different things that they just didn't quite get during that teacher training. Sequencing, a huge thing. So Sharon Nish, who's one of the Goya team leaders here out of Australia, she does this as a profession in Australia. So we're building an entire video sequencing segment. So all these little things, and we're always asking the members to tell us, okay, what do you want to see this month? What can we build? You know, And then you've got the basics, the business basics, right? You know, like, how do I get started? Do I need a resume? How does this work? And these things are ever evolving in our profession. It's not like it was when we started way back when. It was different. You could walk into a studio and they'd say, okay, show me what you got, kind of thing. It's not like that. So many platforms are online. Online teaching is dramatically different. We have an entire program that we're building right now on how to deliver online programming, right? So people don't know the basics of, you know, what microphone do I use? They need everything from the absolute basics to, you know, the very professional type setup that some people are equipped for and are able to do financially and otherwise. And other people, they just want to start small, like in their living room. And how do I get out there? Or I'm afraid to go out there. And, you know, a lot of, again, it's not the fault necessarily of these programs. These programs were told, this is what I need to teach, and this is what I'm able to offer. And you know, anatomy is the classic one, right? Like it never fails. There's just, to be honest, there's a lot of crap anatomy out there, and that's just how it is. And I'm just going to say it. And people don't know how to apply anatomy. So that's a big one. So building something on those aspects. Whereas, you know, when I went back into the library sort of Yoga Alliance thing, yeah, they have a few videos here and there, random, but nothing that says, hey, okay, when we're going to start. They do have, I will give them credit, they have one PDF guide of, you know, starting up as a yoga teacher, but it's just, again, clicking on links that then take you to more links that have you having to research this and that. The problem is we're so inundated with information these days that we don't know what is and what is not anymore, right? So I think they really need the experience of people who've gone through this for so many years and help and understand where this is going. And we've also had many members already reach out to us saying, hey, you know, I've got a little bit of expertise here. Maybe I could give some insight, which is another thing we offer, where our membership is going to be allowed to offer things within the Goya Academy, right? Which is going to be great. So say Karen's a member of Bare Bones Yoga and she wants to offer like a 20-minute quick, you know, synopsis of, you know, why anatomy is important. Why wouldn't we allow that? Yet Yoga Alliance does not offer anything of that nature. They are very particular about what they allow members to offer, which is literally nothing to other members. You can't even advertise your own programs to other members, which is absurd in my mind, because why wouldn't a member who teaches anatomy be allowed to share that with all the other members who could benefit from your program, right? It doesn't make any sense. So I mean, that's really important to like be able to have the members not just watching the videos that we create or whatever. Why not help create them? Why not help be part of them? I mean, granted, we have to have a little bit of a vetting process to make sure that people are qualified for what they're doing. But I mean, I think we learn from one another, right? Don't we grow and build and evolve? You know, I always say surround yourself with smarter people, right? Because that's how we learn, right?
Yeah.
Don't let the ego in. And that's really important, that members can offer things. And for me, the one big thing that we allow for, again, is members to advertise their programmings. They're allowed to be part of the Goya Academy once we open that up. The other big thing is members, you know, the classic Yoga Alliance, we offer member discounts. Great.
Yeah, it reminds me of over the years, I've had a lot of studio owners in the Boston area because they know me. They hire me to teach the anatomy for their 200-hour training. But that all happens because they know me face to face, and you know, they're happy to hand that piece over to me because they know that they're not confident in their understanding of anatomy, so they like to hand it to somebody who loves to teach it. But that's just happening through personal relationships. That's not happening through any kind of me being on the Yoga Alliance website as a continuing education provider and saying, you know, to the membership and this is not to say, you know, I'm complaining about that. It's an example of how that sort of engagement has been happening for me because of
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about. Studio owners who are happy. I mean, when you're running a studio and you're also on faculty to do the teacher training, you're happy to say to me, for the next 15 hours over X number of Saturdays, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee while you have all my trainees and you're teaching them anatomy, like, or I'm doing paperwork for my studio, like that I can take that on for them is, they see that as a wonderful thing along with providing the content. So
Yeah, and the value you bring.
yeah. So let me go back to this idea of, let's say I'm listening, and let's kind of start from the point of view of even someone who's listening who hasn't yet enrolled in a teacher training, but they've been practicing for some period of time and they want to do this, and they're listening to this episode and they're like, I had heard from so-and-so at my yoga studio that I have to go through the Yoga Alliance process and find a 200-hour training online or in person to take. So what we're essentially saying here is you have a choice. You have a choice as to whether or not you want to become a registered yoga teacher with Yoga Alliance. If you want that affiliation, you can have that. As a person who wants to become a yoga teacher, there's nothing to say that you need that registration, but you do need training. So let's just think about it from the point of view of, if I was going to be an auto mechanic, of course, I would work as an apprentice for an auto mechanic person. If I was going to be a chef, of course, I would go to chef school, XYZ examples. So here we're basically saying, let's just think about it logically. To be a yoga teacher, somebody needs to train you. Back in the day, you found that person who would train you, presumably from the studio where you attended classes, and you liked so-and-so studio, you liked so-and-so teacher, you saw a flyer on the wall that you could fly to Mexico with this person for 2 weeks, and that's how you got trained. That was pre-Facebook, pre-Instagram, pre-everything else, right? That we live with now every day, and we think this is normal, right? Back in those days, that's how we were trained. We devoted ourselves to a teacher and a practice in a location, and that was what triggered us to say, I want to do this. And then the logical next step was, well, can you train me? So the person needs training. And I guess what I'm saying is, we're basically saying, go get training. Don't be so much tied up in this narrative that registering with Yoga Alliance is a suggestion of a certain level of quality. You have to do the due diligence as a person to check out the training you want to attend, to see who else went there, to see what they're doing, to have a relationship. Like, so many people go to trainings, they don't even know the person running the training. They've never attended that person's classes. They've never gone to a class. How would you spend $3,000 with somebody to get a 200-hour level of training and not even know that person?
Right. And so absolutely, you're right. The first thing people will do, I presume still this happens to this day, is they go to Google and they say Yoga Alliance, yoga teacher training. Because everyone throws in the word Yoga Alliance into their SEO because they know that's what people are searching, because again, they've heard the narrative somewhere along the way, right? So you're absolutely right. Look at the people's website, look at what they have to offer, look at the pricing. If you're paying, $2,500 for an online yoga teacher training, I would say you should close that website immediately. That is absurd. There's no completely virtual training that, 80% of it is going to be pre-recorded anyway, 20% of it isn't. Why? It's not necessary unless they have something that's like extremely added value. I get it. The average cost of a live in-person training across North America, especially in a studio, is averaging around $3,500. That's really expensive for people. So I see how people are shifting to the hybrid model or the completely online model. But it's your responsibility as an adult, as a learner, as a student, to vet the program. On my school website, I said, please contact us, ask us anything. There are no dumb questions, and people do. And when you respond, and I always say to people, ultimately follow your instinct, because our instinct is never wrong. I feel we just tend not to follow it. So I've had many conversations with people at the beginning. They write an email and it's a little bit aggressive sometimes, how some people will write an email say, oh, what is your program about? Oh, and then we get to talking and then, 2 days later, they're in the program. And it's wonderful. But I feel like it's our responsibility to understand what we're purchasing. Please do understand that. You might not know that teacher in advance because it's not like it was once upon a time when we went to yoga studios and followed teachers, but there are videos of those teachers online. I guarantee you, look at their reviews. Look that their reviews are reviews that are public and that are real. That's really important. It's so easy to fabricate things these days. Unfortunately, the yoga industry is not, exclusive from that either. And yes, you're going to call what I call, the superstar yogis. People always look for the superstar yogis out there, and they're wonderful and they're great. But I feel they also have a responsibility in this industry because they have such influence and followership that, set the record straight. Don't just fall into line with, the yoga alliances of the world. Ask questions, make the difference. So, if your calling is to be a yoga teacher or you just want to take it for your personal development, scope it out, look around a little bit, take some time. These programs are going to be there all the time. There are so many programs to choose from. I understand that, and it can be overwhelming. And all of them are going to say, yes, Yoga Alliance this, or not Yoga Alliance this, or why we're not. But get a vibe for the program. See what they're actually offering. Look at the content of the program. Look at the teachers who are offering them. Again, there isn't anyone that doesn't have visibility online somewhere. So you'll be able to find them. Ask them, people will email us and I'll send them a video portion, a small video portion of the program and say, here, check it out. This is sort of the teaching style. If it resonates with you, this is your program. If it isn't, go around and ask these questions when you're asking. And often I'll give them a list of questions to ask schools, because I think a school should be able to answer those questions and answer them, sufficiently so that the person can make an informed decision. Because in all the years that we've had yoga school, I think maybe once or twice did I ever get an email from a student that says, oh, this isn't quite what I thought, right? Because I think transparency is important as well, right? There's a lot of that fluffery out there. Oh yeah, we're this and we're that. And that's all great because we have such a short attention span these days, I think, that people just need to catch your eye. But really, what are you getting, and does it resonate with you personally? So start there. Don't start looking at whether they have this badge or that badge, or you don't need anyone's badge. You don't need Goya's badge. You don't need Yoga Alliance's badge. You don't need another Yoga Alliance's badge. You don't need anything. You just need to be in a program that teaches you how to teach well, safely, effectively, understanding anatomy, and giving you the resources to say, okay, maybe I don't know the next phases in the business phase, but we know about this organization that helps with that. If you feel like it, great. If you don't, absolutely do not, right? But not to say, okay, right away, you must now enroll with Yoga Alliance, right? So so I think people just need to start from the bare bones. Just start looking, just search yoga teacher training, like whether you want it in your area or online. And remember, the ones that come up to the top are often the paid ones, because people with money can afford those things. And a lot of really great small schools can't afford that. So they might not be on that first page of Google, right? So, take your time. It's an investment that will change your life, I think. I mean, it changed mine, I only for the better. So I want people to realize that, they have that option. And for us, we want them to realize that they have a space to come to while they're a student. They can come to us as well, and use resources. Even if they're not a student in teacher training, they can still come as a practitioner of yoga and really just, have a space where they can begin to maybe just get a feel for what that looks like as well, right? So again, my hope is that we begin to change the narrative of what this looks like as time goes on, and we really have a space for our teaching professionals, schools across the globe, student practitioners, wellness practitioners, where we can come together, we can have community, which I know is a word that people throw around all the time, but a real space where people can share conversation, open, candid conversation, where we can learn from one another, where we grow with each other, and we don't have to pay some ridiculous fees. And frankly, ridiculous, I think it is. And that's in my opinion. And I sort of did an accounting this morning just out of curiosity over the years, what this has cost me. And I thought, wow, and all I got was a newsletter every once in a while. And I just, and I felt like I sort of felt a little bit scammed,
And you're
and
talking too about fees that you pay as a studio offering a training versus fees that someone else might be paying as an individual teacher registered with Yoga Alliance.
right. So a teacher starting off with Yoga Alliance pays 105 to begin the registration process and 65 each year. But a school starts off at, about $1,000 to begin. And every year those fees, and every time you add a new school, it's a whole nother process. So some people want to offer 5 or 6 programs, but they can't, because who can afford $3,000 or $4,000 in fees by the time you're done? A small studio or a small program can't afford that. And then you kind of feel like, oh, well, I can't offer that, because the first question someone's going to ask is it a Yoga Alliance program? Right.
Yeah, and this is
And
because, like you said, the narrative is so strong, and I am a big one to dispel myths. I dispel a lot of myths in my social media content because I get hit with so many of them when I work one-on-one with teachers in my program. And there are a lot of myths around I have to teach this particular way, and so many things that is ingrained as a narrative that, like the game of telephone, has just been passed on and passed on. And again, because I've been over 20 years, I heard a lot of this stuff when I started teaching, and it's still out there, and it makes me crazy because all it does is prevent people from teaching in an authentic and impactful way, and it makes them feel less than. And so all of what we're talking about here with respect to the exclusivity and certain people get certain deals and you have to have a certain stamp of all of that reeks of exclusivity, not inclusivity. And if my mission is to get as many people out there teaching yoga and absolutely loving it, that stuff doesn't help. And so that's why I'm really passionate about having this conversation with you. So the last thing I want to talk to is, we just spoke a little bit about the person listening who is looking for a training, and we talked about it with respect to some of the different options they have. And I hope it's illuminated for that kind of listener that there are a lot more options, and there's, I think, a much better process to find a program. Let's end with talking to the listener who is a teacher. I am out there, I am teaching, I did my 200-hour training. Geez, I may have even taken a 500-hour because I thought I had to do that in order to really be seen as a really high level teacher. I have to have that 500 hours after my name. Otherwise, no one's going to believe that I really know what the hell I'm doing. And let's talk to that teacher now. So this person is out there now, they're teaching, they're listening to this episode, and they might be like, oh my God, all of this stuff they're talking about is really just leaving me feeling like I'm now unmoored. I'm now out there and I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing so that I can be supported, get good quality continuing education. I'm teaching and yeah, I like it, but I'm not really sure that, maybe I want to do things that I'm not feeling able to do. Where am I going to go for that support? Maybe I'm thinking of taking a 300 or a 500 because prior to listening to this episode, I just assumed that that would make me a better teacher, right? Because it's more hours must equal better teacher, right? So let's talk. And I'm relating all this to you so freely because I hear this all the time. I hear it all the time from all the people who enroll in my program. They come with this content and come with this feedback. And so I've been doing this long enough that I can sort of see the arc of it and the stories that have come from teachers all over the world. It's not just in the United States where I live. So let's talk to that person now. What say you with respect to what options they have? Go.
Right. So say you are currently a 500-hour teacher out there, you're teaching, you are a member of Yoga Alliance, you thought all along, okay, this is the standard, this is the golden standard, and I've been doing it. And what I would say to them is, I want you to sit down for a few minutes and be introspective and think, okay, I've been a member with an organization for 5 or 6 years. What is the value that I'm receiving? When you buy Netflix, you know what you're buying, right? We don't question it. We were like, okay, we're going to get our videos, we're going to watch it. And that's, a very simple comparison, but what are you getting in return for your investment in this organization, who is and self-proclaimed members organization? If you are a members organization, you are for the member, right? You are there to support and assist the member. You are there to offer resources to the member. Perhaps they've had challenges over the years. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to leave your membership with them, but I would encourage you to perhaps try something different, which for the first year, again, we're offering it complimentary to everyone. Give it a try and just see what you're getting. I mean, if you have to go out and pay for a bunch of additional CE courses just to get your C credits for Yoga Alliance, that's another cost to the teacher. A lot of yoga teachers are not making a whole lot of money. This is often their second or third job. At Goya, you can do all your CE credits inside of Goya, and there's no additional cost for that. You can begin to build your online profile with your entire community here. I'm not saying, I know some people, and it's interesting because the first email I sent out, I said, is it time to break up with Yoga Alliance? And, I thought that was a little bit catch, and I thought of it, and I thought, ooh, that's not going to hit well with some people. But right away, people were very, very open to saying, I just never thought about a few of these things, right? I didn't know that I had another option, or I didn't have the option. So if you feel comfortable staying with them still at this time, absolutely stay. I mean, follow your intuition. But I will guarantee you that the alternative that we provide in this space is something that has never been offered in this space and is desperately needed. And it's built by teachers and students for teachers and students. I know there is a handful of people on the Yoga Alliance leadership team who are also yoga teachers, things like that. This is, and I'm again going to be completely transparent, we are not a not-for-profit at this stage because financially we're unable to be. That's unrealistic. Yoga Alliance is a not-for-profit, and they do some wonderful things with some of their not-for-profit money. But I think everyone should take a look at their financials. For those of you who are not familiar with the CEO of Goya, Shannon Roche, her annual salary after taxable benefits is $313,000 US. That's a fair chunk of change. And I'm not saying people shouldn't be paid well for the job that they're doing, but I, as a member of that organization, have never seen the value and was always living in fear of leaving that organization. And that fear just built up to frustration and to realizing there's something better that can be done with our community. And again, it's not us or them, or it's, decide what works for you. We're not here to force anyone one way or the other, but there's something different, and there are resources that are accessible and available to you that I guarantee you will not find anywhere else at this stage. And if that sort of, pushes Yoga Alliance to do better, that's great too, because I think everyone can do better.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes people don't know they have options. Like even before Goya existed, most yoga teachers probably didn't realize I don't even need to be part of this organization. I don't even need to do this. If my focus is just simply to get quality training, I can just do my own research and do based on my own research. Now, granted, if I don't feel like I have the expertise to recognize quality training, maybe it's helpful to associate with someone who has some sort of stamp of approval from an organization. But again, I think it's more about giving people options and putting the focus on, I'm not saying that within Yoga Alliance, the 200, 300, and 500 hour trainers aren't quality trainers, just like you said.
Right.
A lot of these programs are amazing. It's just that I feel like the unfortunate thing is, for instance, when I take my 200 hour, if I'm just in my head thinking, well, I must have 500 hours in order to really be a quality teacher, I'm not then going and looking for a training to make me a better teacher. I'm just looking for a training to fill that hours requirement. And so
That's right.
spending money and time getting maybe quality training, but does it really help me be a better teacher? Or is it just doing that thing that I think I have to do so that I can be perceived as someone of quality? And that,
Right.
I think, is what we need to decouple. We need to decouple
Right.
that and put the individual person in the driver's seat with regard to what am I doing that fulfills the needs that I have so that I get the results that I want. Not I'm doing these things on this checklist that this organization has held out as the required checklist for me as a yoga teacher. That's my biggest concern, because I want to
Right.
be clear, I am not hating on individual schools and trainer. I mean,
No,
there are, but the individual person is oftentimes just checking the box. And every individual teacher is going to have different things they need. And just like the consumer, when I go to the grocery store, you may buy red cabbage, I may buy zucchini based on what we need. Why can't I, as a yoga teacher, go out there and look and make a decision based on what I need, rather than, oh, I have to do 300 hours because I did 200 and the narrative is telling me 500 makes me a better teacher, even though I might not even, looking at this training agenda, I might not even need any of this stuff. I might feel pretty good.
absolutely. And
So
again, I think that the point we have to hit home, and it's the base point, is that the organization that has existed for time and time again now, they do not do any boots on the ground work. There is no checking after I fill in a form and submit the information that they want to see from me, right? Because that's what's happening. They list their criteria, and most schools then just create their criteria to be built around that. And then when they go into the studio 3 weeks from now, there's nobody to verify that that's actually happening. And in fact, most of them switch it up, I guarantee you, because some of the criteria is not that great, right?
right. And these
Like,
are the stories that I hear when people tell me, oh, the physical therapist who was in my teacher training as a trainee, the studio owner deferred to that person to teach the anatomy because she realized on day one, oh, I have a physical therapist in this training program. Why don't I just have her cover? So again, I don't want this conversation to necessarily be perceived as a bashing of Yoga Alliance. I wanted to be
no, absolutely not.
this is an intelligent conversation that we need to be having, so the consumer of yoga student and the teacher out there can be educated about what are the options, and what is the reality of being a registered yoga teacher, that it is different from being certified, that there are no boots on the ground. Like, that is, I think, a story that no one is really talking about. And there's this assumption that something must be happening like that. Otherwise, how can this be the only organization out there?
Right. Absolutely. And
So,
yeah, absolutely. And again, I will say, I am 100% sure that, and you've known about yoga lines before they even, you were teaching before they
yeah,
existed. So they had, I'm sure they were always well intentioned,
yeah,
and things were, but I think as time went on, it's just become stagnant. And
yeah.
it just sort of became, unless something really pushed them, like the pandemic, did they make the changes that their membership really were asking for a long time. And when it takes a global pandemic to do that's questionable. And
Yeah.
that's, and again, there is no vetting. Let's just make it clear. Nobody is checking anything after stage one. And I can say that in complete honesty, because I am one of those people that should be vetted as time goes on.
Called them myself one time and got into a conversation with someone on their 800 number who literally said to me, we do not have boots on the ground. I didn't come up with that verbiage. That was
Okay.
and I get it, you know, they're an organization that exists in a physical location, and there aren't. I mean, you would have to have an entire decentralized program or people in different states. There'd be a whole other structure that would need, or at least some kind of interface, phone wise or whatever, to ensure quality at the level of these hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trainings, to be able to stand behind the registry as providing
As a, absolutely.
quality.
And yeah, and I think too, I mean, you know, everyone can do basic math. I mean, when you think of their membership base, approximately 7,000 schools, approximately 50,000 plus members, and their financials are public, you know, take a look at those numbers. And I say, what is being put back to the membership? What is being developed for the membership? You know, if we can do it with starting at zero, right? You know, and literally investing personal resources, because I believe so passionately about this, that I just want a change. I just want a change for our community. And I want teachers and students to feel like they belong somewhere, because our profession is not a profession that is part of any sort of regulation or authoritative body. So we have to help guide one another. And often we just leave so many of us stranded that we don't know what to do. And then people get disgruntled and they stop bringing the power of yoga to their communities.
That's exactly at the heart of the matter at the end of the day. And this is what I always say, my whole mission is to get more people out there teaching.
Yes.
Because yoga is such an important modality for overall health and wellness. And so all of what we're talking about here is about the barriers to doing that, not increasing accessibility to do that. And from a personal mission standpoint, that is what fuels me more than anything else. So even though, you know, this necessarily wasn't on my hot list of issues, you know,
Yeah.
it has always been part of what I speak to in my content. And it is 100% the part of the reason why I offer my own standalone program, because I know that there's a gap, and I know that that gap in the current training program process prevents people from teaching in a way where they love it and it feels easy and they feel authentic and they feel empowered. So I saw that as a gap filler, an opportunity for me that matches what I love to teach, which is anatomy. And in that process, I uncovered all these stories. So I just so appreciate I have not ever had this kind of conversation with someone about this particular topic. And I'm so grateful that we had this opportunity, because you really can't have this conversation with anybody who isn't a yoga teacher and who hasn't been teaching for a long time, because we share kind of that perspective. And I sort of feel like it's been really helpful, and I hope for the listener it's been helpful to hear some of the history, to hear kind of the trajectory of things, to hear about back in the day when there wasn't science, or when it was just starting. This is really the essence of how teachers were trained. That was such an amazing, amazing time. And we've really, not for good or bad, but we really are in a different time. But we still need yoga out there, and we need people doing it who love it and feel like it's easy, not that they feel like it's hard and it makes me nervous and I'm not qualified and I don't have enough hours and everything is just a barrier for me going out there and sharing what, on some level, I feel like it's my dharma to do it. So
absolutely.
yeah.
So thank you for that. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for responding to my email and questioning me. I loved it. I thought, wow, she's got some great questions.
Yeah.
And I've got some good answers. And because
Yeah.
I really want people to have that conversation with me. That's why my name is on that email. I don't want them talking to Matea, who is our member services agent, because I am ultimately responsible for what we are going to provide here with, you know, a few other people in our leadership team. And it's important to me that I have the answers to the questions. And, you know, for the people listening on your podcast, please, if you feel so inclined, visit us, join us. You can use the coupon code CHANGE, and join us for free for the first year.
Tell them where they go to do that.
They'll go to globalonlineyogassociation.org. And if you probably put that in the notes there because it's a long one. And yeah, join us. You'll find it. And when you register, you can register as a student, a teacher, whatever your vibe is and whatever you're practicing at this particular point in time. And just give it a whirl and see. I mean, cancellation is always available, just like on Netflix, I say. You can just press cancel, but please give it a try and just see, what we have to offer. Even if you watch 1 or 2 videos or a course or a workshop, and it's just something that inspires you. If we've done something to bring a little more assistance and clarity to our profession and to our teachers and to our students and our entire community, I think we're doing good work. I mean, it's baby steps. We're doing it one at a time. We don't know what a year from now will look like because we're getting so much input. And we've, like I said, in the short time, we've had so many members come through. Our tech team is struggling to keep the site, as fast as we need it to be. So we know that people are looking for change. They're looking for something different. And again, the other organization, Yoga Alliance, has had its place and had its time. And, I'm sure they'll continue to exist, but there are choices and people need to make the right choice for themselves.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm watching the clock here. We've been going for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Time. I feel like though it was, as I said earlier, a kind of an organic conversation. And I really think that it will give the listener a really good idea of what their options are. So I feel like we checked the box there, and I'm really glad
Amazing.
I think that really does a service to really who's ever listening that's associated with yoga as a student or primarily, of course, as a teacher. So thank you. So
okay, thank you, Karen.
This is going to go up on Monday. Today is
okay.
Tuesday, so it'll go up Monday, and I'll send you the link. So just stay on. We're going to just take a break here, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And hey, one more thing. While I don't know you personally, I know what a yoga teacher looks like who's ready to have a breakthrough to being the kind of yoga teacher who walks around the room, sharing cues you know the reason for, understands anatomy, teaching signature sequences without notes or any need to practice with class, and loves teaching yoga without stress, anxiety, or nervousness. If you are ready to be that yoga teacher, here is your next step. DM me the words podcast offer, and I will give you a special incentive to work with me inside of my signature program just because you are listening to the podcast. DM me on Instagram at Bare Bones Yoga. I can't wait to hear from you.